Hi, everyone. I'm excited to introduce you to my guest today. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see me glance at my notes. I really like to be intentional with how I introduce people on the show, and my memory isn't what it used to be. My guest today is Nadia Caira, the co founder of Beacon Talent Group and a seasoned executive search professional. With 2 decades of experience placing senior leaders across Canada. Before launching Beacon in 2018, she spent nearly a decade in boutique search developing a reputation for thoughtful, strategic work and a deep understanding of what makes leadership effective. She brings a coaching lens, a values driven approach, and a belief in long term partnership that has shaped high performing teams and supported leadership success across industries. Nadia is on my impact list because she leads with conviction, clarity, and a deep sense of integrity. She has a way of slowing things down so the right decisions can emerge, not the rushed ones. She builds trust through presence, discipline, and a genuine partnership. Today, we talk about the values that anchor her leadership, the moments that shaped her, and the unlearning that helped her build a practice rooted in trust. We explore how she navigates the complexities of executive search, how she stays grounded when leadership gets loud, and the people who influenced her along the way. Let's get into it. Nadia, it's so great to get this time with you. I feel like even though we've had years of professional and personal relationship, I don't think we've actually spent this much time in a room dedicated to hearing about your career and what's brought you here. Before we dive in, I'm curious, it's a Monday. I know that, might not be a Monday when folks are listening, but what's something that gave you pause last week or this week or making you laugh?
Yeah. Well, firstly, Lori, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be on your podcast and so proud of you. Like you said, so many years we have worked together. So this is such an amazing opportunity to connect in a different capacity. So thank you. And appreciate the question on what's made me pause this week. I would say, yesterday was International Women's Day. So that was something that there was a big point of reflection for me, and specifically like the conversations I was having leading up to it as well. For me, I've been so fortunate to work alongside so many incredible women like yourself, so many leaders. And I think, it's been such a great reminder how important it is, to really support one another, to lift each other up as well. And this month, actually, at our firm as well, we've been doing a spotlight series. It's called Women Shaping Leadership. So we've been reaching out to some of our partners so we can share their stories, but also hear some of their reflections. So for me, it's been really inspiring to hear, what they're saying, what's really resonating with them. And I wanted to share one of the conversations I had recently was with one of my favorite partners. She's an incredible, incredible leader and a lovely human, has had such a successful career. And I was asking her, what advice she would give to her younger self. And she shared, I wrote it down because I loved it. She said, cherish the relationships and recognize your cheerleaders. She said it's the people she confides in, leans on, and laughs with that made the tough days better and gave her the energy to stay focused. And I
I
love
love that.
that. Yeah, I loved it too. I thought, like, one, it just really resonated with me. And I think importantly, it's a really great reminder that leadership, that success, like, is never built alone. It's really about like leaning on people, supporting one another, and having that community. So that's been something I've really been kind of feeling and thinking about, which has been
Uh,
amazing.
I love that you're bringing that into the show this morning because really the whole show is about leadership impact
Mm.
and the imprint that you leave and the people who help to shape you along the way. As we go through our conversation today, we're going to keep coming back to those threads. So I think it's such a wonderful tie in and International Women's Day. It does really give you that moment to pause and think about what came before and where we're headed and how we are coming as a collective up that curve together.
Yeah.
And so it's perfect segue into why you're on the impact list. And you're there because you lead with a kind of grounded clarity, and it's really rare. You've got this ability to hold complexity without making it heavy. You name a truth without those sharp edges, and you create the spaces where people can really feel seen and safe. And you've shaped my own thinking about leadership, especially around how belonging is kind of built in and not declared. And you model what steadiness looks like. And I think that's really important, especially when I think about the work that you do in executive search and beyond, really being that place where people can work out all the rough edges so they can be their best selves when they get into those higher pressure situations. So, it's really hard when somebody tells you all the things they think about you, but I am curious about what resonates with you.
Thank you. I those are like really nice things to hear and really appreciate the words. I think, it can be overwhelming to hear, the gratitude and very appreciative of kind of what you're sharing. I think for me, I always try to show up as my most authentic self and truly everything that I do. I would say at Beacon and the work that we do, we take so much responsibility in, supporting organizations, supporting candidates in really critical career decisions. So I always want to show up, with the level of clarity, support, and guidance to really help, not just solve problems, but make a smooth transition feel great, feel like it makes sense in terms of what's next for them. So I always try to bring a lens of clarity, a lens of authenticity, a lens of perspective to really guide in terms of the right types of decisions. And I think I, have my coaching certificate. I don't do coaching anymore on like a day-to-day standpoint, but the tools of coaching, I leverage every day, whether it's with organizations I'm supporting, whether it's candidates I'm supporting, and really try to provide that level of insight, to support in terms of the evaluation they need to make really complex decisions for them.
Oh, for sure. And it all comes through, right? Your styles, your value, your presence. I think that it really shows that thoughtfulness that comes with going through that coaching certification, years of helping coach and, whether they were official coachees
Mm,
or just
yeah.
potential candidates, right? And I'm curious about, where did that come from?
Mm.
Where did that desire to kind of help people be their best, if that's it for you? Or tell me a bit about that.
I would say, I've been almost 20 years in executive coaching and 10 years in coaching. I would say like everything I do is really rooted in my core values, both as a leader and how I show up, but really in terms of everyday decisions. So my core values, would be integrity, transparency, and trust. So, how I always want to show up, whether it's, internally, whether it's externally with clients and partners, would be, you know, I'm calm, I'm very open, but I have a very strong sense of curiosity. So, for me, I really try to create environments, where people do feel heard, where they do feel supported, but also, wanting to maintain very high standards for outcomes. So, kind of going back to what I said earlier, in our business, like in the business of executive search, our role is really to bring a lot of clarity and perspective. So, supporting our clients through critical hiring decisions, but very importantly, ensuring candidates feel respected through a process, informed through a process. So when I lead and when we lead, it's really through transparency and trust. And I think as a result, that builds confidence on both sides.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think it's really interesting when you think about kind of how people experience
Mm.
how you lead, and, one of the things that I always really appreciated, especially when I was on the other side of the table and I was a client
Yeah.
of yours, not as a coachee, but in my previous HR life, is that you're right. We would be in these very high pressure situations and you would just slow it down.
Mhm.
You would be able to diffuse the situation, take out, any of the issues that could feel not contentious, but could feel like we were getting to a point where there was very divergent ideas. And I'm curious, like, in those moments where you can feel that you're across from a client, Maybe you have a CHRO and a CEO, and there's definitely something that doesn't feel quite right, or a hiring manager, it just doesn't feel like everybody's aligned.
Yeah.
Tell me about how your leadership comes through in those moments.
I think you really nailed it in terms of the alignment. I think alignment and clarity, that is the only way you can move forward. I think for me, for us at Beacon, it's being able to take a step back and like I said earlier, really wanting to hear where the disconnect actually is. For us to do a great job supporting your leadership team, but also ensuring we're bringing the right people to your organization to really drive productivity and support complex decisions. It's making sure that fit is going to be there from a culture standpoint, but also the right skill set, the right background, the right personality traits. So I think it's really coming in with a level of understanding, again, taking that step back to ensure that all parties are being heard, that all parties, voices are being supported, and then really getting to the core of what's most important, what is really critical, and asking for us the right questions to help get to that point. I think sometimes we have an idea of what we need, but you know this, it's like actually when we iron down the details, it's like, what does that actually mean? What are we actually trying to get out of this? So I think it's providing that level of strategy and support and clear guidance and also market perspective, right? To say, what do we actually need? What is our intention? And what would success look like? And provide a few scenarios, few options to make it more tangible and understanding what it could actually look like. So it is more digestible and we can be really clear in the narrative as we do go out to market. And you feel as an organization that you are aligned in terms of what your decision is going to be.
Absolutely. It's those moments of alignment that it just they were really helpful for me when I was on the other side, being able to say like, okay, we want this specific characteristic, not that characteristic, right?
Yeah.
Because things can feel really close, right? Like you want somebody who's organized, but organized doesn't always mean attention to detail. So which is it? Is it someone who can stay on top of everything, or somebody who's read the entire briefing and can tell you all those details? There's something in that nuance.
And I think it's very importantly understanding where your company is in your journey. If it is for a people leader, if it's for a finance leader, if it's a technology leader, where are you in your journey and what do you actually need to propel this next stage of growth? And really, honing in on current state and future state. So that way we can be really clear with the market, with candidates, and set a realistic expectation about where the business is. And the more aligned we are in terms of managing expectations, the likeliness is the stronger the outcome, the
Right.
stronger the retention, and really ensuring that that alignment continues to exist after the successful placement has been made.
For sure, for sure. And one of the things I think is interesting about your career arc is that, we're coming today talking, you've got about, I think you guys are celebrating 8 years
We are. Yes.
at Beacon, right?
Thank you.
And so you've got this 8 years at Beacon. You've really honed this well thought through process with candidates.
Mhm.
It's come through, as you said, 20 years of executive search, informed by the 10 years of coaching. I always feel like as leaders, we have a turning point.
Yeah.
We've got these great careers where, the outcome at the end, everybody sort of sees we're in these really successful spots, but it took a while to get there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot in that. And so, you know, tell me what is a moment that really shaped how you lead.
Yeah.
So a moment where something like it clicked or it changed or it just sort of propelled you forward. Maybe you were stuck. As I hear and I've experienced the success that you have received, like tell me more about where you started.
Great question. So I would say, like I said, I've spent many years in executive search. I am very passionate about the work that I do. I love supporting organizations. I love working with candidates. Like I said before, there's so much meaningful responsibility that comes with the work that we do. But truthfully, I would say the biggest like defining leadership moment for me would have been, the concept of starting Beacon with Morgan Ruskin, my business partner. This, of course, was a very big decision, definitely one we did not take lightly. And if you think about like the risk associated, right? It's walking away from a stable environment to build something from scratch. So, yes, there is a ton of uncertainty. There's also a lot of questions you get from peers, family, whomever that are always have your best interest at heart, but making sure it's going to be the right long-term opportunity. I would say, for me, I always had confidence in my capabilities, my work ethic. I always had confidence in Morgan and my capabilities as a team and a partnership. So I think what really drove this decision for us and for me was truly to build something that was going to be a stronger reflection of our core values and the desire to create something where we could operate at the highest level of quality, the highest standards, and really be true, strategic partners to both our clients and candidates. And I would say, like, from the very beginning, 8 years ago, we've put so much thought into how to create the best possible experience, like, really being able to provide the level of, like, white glove service. And it's, like I said, supporting candidates, individuals through these very important, very big career decisions, but, helping our clients find the right leaders for their organization. So what this moment and honestly what these past 8 years as a result have really taught me is sometimes even though there is uncertainty, you still have to act with conviction. I think that is very important. And I think it also means being really disciplined, not necessarily, from a day-to-day standpoint, but as it relates to your core values. So for us, like being comfortable saying no and being disciplined in our approach when working, when it didn't align, with our standards or our core values, even in the building stage. And if we felt that it didn't align, being comfortable calling it and making those tough decisions. So I think as a result, it's been really important and for us, really fulfilling to work for organizations who do align with those values, but care about the employee experience, care about the candidate experience and are willing to invest the time with us to secure the right talent.
And I wanna go back to something you just said about, even if it feels risky and there's uncertainty, doing it with conviction. Because we're always taught through our careers, especially as women, you just fake it till you get there,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And that always feels like a disingenuous, doesn't feel true. It's like, but, I don't know, like, it just doesn't feel like we're getting the right coaching around that imposter syndrome, but I actually think what you said is much more about choice
mhm.
and agency, and it is risky, but I am gonna show up knowing that I did the right thing, and, talk to me a little bit about, especially, as we said earlier on International Women's Day here, that difference between being told that, "Oh, you'll just get there eventually," versus, "No, I am gonna show up."
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit about how for you that could feel different.
I think for me, it always goes with aligning with my values. Like being told, to show up or like making the concrete choice that this is how I want to show up. If something like doesn't feel right or doesn't feel authentic, I think you get to a point in your career where you are fortunate to be able to make those decisions. Like, can I move forward? Do I have to move forward? I think for me, if something is not aligned with my core values and I feel like it's not serving me, or importantly, the people within Beacon and the people that I'm representing at Beacon, then it's not something I would move forward with. I think like there is a line. I think it's always really important in any leadership role to be able to showcase, flexibility and really be understanding of what is important, what's necessary, where the goals and strategy are, moving towards. But it's going to be up to you as to whether or not you are comfortable in whatever capacity. And I think for me, it's making the decision as long as it aligns with my core values I would be comfortable with it. As long as it's serving myself and the organization that I'm representing and Beacon Talent as a whole, I will feel comfortable. If it doesn't, and I feel like there's a misalignment in that regard, it's not something I would, likely be comfortable doing.
And I think it's about that challenge around, like, if I'm not comfortable doing those things, is it because I haven't done them before? And that's why. So is it a fear component, or is it actually something that doesn't align with
No,
my
I think that's a
values?
really good, and that's where, like, the flexibility comes up
Mhm.
too, right? I think, it not saying no just to say no. I think it's like actually putting thought into it. I think there's a lot of parts of our business and businesses as a whole these days that are seeing just so much change. So there's always going to be a bit of a risk. There's always going to be a bit of fear that correlates with that uncertainty. And, our business has so much uncertainty. So if we just said no every time we were nervous, obviously we wouldn't be successful and most senior leaders wouldn't be successful. But I think it's really like, am I doing the right thing for me? Like, can I go to sleep tonight because I'm making the right call and the right decision and putting enough thought and care into how I'm showing up, how I'm representing my team, how I'm representing an organization to make that decision.
And I think that a lot of that comes from just experience, right? It's the experience of having not made the right decisions before, or being uncertain and waiting to sort of see how it goes. And, you know, with the careers that we've built and that you've watched other people build, what's a belief about leadership that you've had to unlearn?
It's a really good question, and I think, like, it has a theme of control, to be very honest. I think, like,
Yeah.
early on, the belief would be if I work hard enough, if I do all the right things in this process or whatever it might be, you can control the outcome, and how amazing would that be, right? And
Oh, totally.
win would be incredible. I would say in our business, like, yes, we're very disciplined in our process, especially as it relates to, for example, search execution. We can be very thorough in terms of our true market landscape, in terms of how we evaluate talent, how we're asking questions, how we're coming with counter questions to really control as much as we can through a process. But the reality is, like, it doesn't always work. And I think, like, people feel that in businesses in any capacity. As much as you try, it doesn't always work. And it can be like gut wrenching, it can be really emotional. I think, like, in relation to search, time invested, care invested, not just by us, but, our clients, the candidates, I think it can be just really hard to kind of get to that point. And I think most importantly is the understanding of, as much as you want to be able to control the outcome in a people centric business, in any environment working with people, you can't control what's going to happen. You can only control how you're going to show up. And I think for me, like, what that means is I can control how hard I work. I can control how I prepare. I can control how I support, my partners, how I support organizations and candidates. I can control, like, how I problem solve, and then importantly, like, how I wanna move forward, but I can't necessarily control the outcome. So I do think, like, for us and most businesses and leaders, it's in these moments when, clients, when stakeholders and partners are probably watching most closely, right? I think it's like the level of resilience you can bring while still showing up with the same level of integrity and perspective and care, when things aren't going as planned. And I think, like, for me, that's been one of the most important lessons and something, I take with me every day.
Similarly, since going out on my own as well, I sort of feel like you have to create the conditions
Mhm,
for you to be able to
mhm.
show up as your best self in every meeting and every call. And all I can control is how I'm showing up.
Yep.
I can't control, if I, win the client, if I don't win the client, if the session goes well, if it doesn't go well. But if I create the conditions where I'm my best self, that is half the battle. And you're right. I think earlier in my career, I didn't appreciate that.
You
I was like, you know what? It's okay that I've only slept 5 hours because I've been working on projects all week. And it's
right,
totally fine that,
right.
it's I think I reviewed the deck, but I don't know if I reviewed the deck. Now I feel like as we progressed, it's actually about the only thing I control is myself.
Mhm, mhm.
That is absolutely, and it's something I work a lot with my clients on as well, because we are taught that if you just keep working and working, good hard work will be
Yeah,
noticed. But what is good hard work,
yeah.
you know?
Effort doesn't always mean impact, right? And I think
Yeah,
that's something that's really important to understand as you get more senior. You can do all the right things, but it doesn't necessarily net out the way that you want. And like I said, I think it's how you show up in those times of when how things are not going well, when difficult decisions have to be made, difficult conversations have to be made, how you show up as a human, as a leader, are the things that really separate one from another.
absolutely. And was there sort of, when you think about it, was there a shift for you where you like had a moment where you're like, okay, yes, this is all I can control, or was it kind of like a gradual, just as the work evolved, as the business evolved?
It was a gradual, to be really honest, like I said, in any people-centric business, you don't really know what's gonna happen. Like, we can do all the right things. We can, strive to continue to grow our business. You never know if a client's gonna continue to hire you, not gonna hire you. We can do all the right things, but I think it's our responsiveness and how we move forward. It's just the lesson you have to take. Otherwise, you can be stifled. It can get you down and like starting a business, leading a business, wanting to grow a business, like you can't. Like it's okay to take those moments and, you know, reset, but you also have to continue to move forward. You have to be excited enough and believe enough in what you're doing to continue to move forward. So, I I think it's just been like an evolution to say if things aren't going how we exactly want, and even though it's out of our control, it's okay. Like we will persevere, we will be better for it. And these will just be learnings and experiences that when we look back, 10 years from now, we'll be fortunate that we went through them because as a
Mhm.
result, we've gotten to this point.
And what I'm hearing underneath that is say that, that kind of unlearning
Mhm.
makes it possible for you to unlock
Mhm.
the organization that you wanna grow, the clients that you wanna work with, because your energy and your time is going into the relationships and the work that actually
Yeah.
aligns with what you're
Exactly.
doing.
Yeah. Who do we want to be? Who do we want to grow with? Who do we want to work with? And how can we continue to do our best work? So I think those are great themes that we often have to think about. And when times are challenging or there are problems to navigate through, just acknowledging that, it will be okay and not getting stuck in that noise.
For sure. And, it goes right into what do you do when leadership does get loud for you and you have to stay grounded? And obviously, I know, Morgan's a great support. It's always helpful to have
Yeah,
somebody to bounce the ideas off of. But
100%.
I'm curious for you, like, what is that practice that sort of keeps you connected?
Yeah, and you're right, like Morgan, like, we're very fortunate for the partnership that we do have because when things do get loud, we absolutely have one another, and that is an incredible support in terms of kinda moving things forward. I think organizations and businesses, everyone's navigating in like different scenarios and different pressures today, whether it's economical changes, technology advances, and truly just evolving expectations around work and how to work. And the world can also feel heavy. So I would say, like, for me, it really comes down to being more grounded and like taking a moment to reset, like I said earlier. So for me, it's going back to the core question of what the organization and the people involved in this scenario, what do they need? And focusing on, for instance, the values that guide our work, right? So I think that is number one in terms of allowing that reset and allowing myself to kind of step away and just actually focus on what's happening. And I also think like when things feel complex, like the best thing you can do as a leader is bring clarity and slow down in that situation. And again, like taking a step away, for me, that can mean going for a walk with my dogs,
Mhm.
can mean spending time with my husband, my family, my friends, just like being removed from the situation to bring some of that clarity. And I also think like giving yourself permission to not be so hard on yourself in those moments too. for me, like it's very easy to look at a situation, analyze what happened, maybe overanalyze it, and always try to find learnings from what materialized. And I do think that's very important as you reflect, as you grow, to try to find those learnings. But I also think it is okay to give yourself permission to be nice to yourself and to take time to give that perspective and truly reset and then come back with a bit more of that clarity to support how you move forward.
And I think I shared this with you a few weeks ago. We were talking. For me, it's this like I can hear you talking in my head from all the years of coaching
Yeah.
that I find like when I'm in a really tense session with clients, you've got a speech cadence where you slow your speech down
Mm,
and then everybody slows down around you.
mm,
And I find myself employing that a lot. There's something to be said about, as the leader, having a physical manifestation of
right.
what does slowing down look like. And the fastest way to do it is you take the deep breath and you slow down your words.
Mhm,
And I think, and I've seen it in meetings too, that just that clarity that
mhm.
comes from being slower and more intentional with your voice,
Yeah.
I think it does a lot.
It's being clear, it's being thoughtful, and like you said, being intentional, right? So I think it can calm you and it can calm the people around you too. And, taking a step away there, that's never going to cause any harm. It doesn't have to be days, it can be minutes, but giving yourself permission to at least remove yourself from whatever is happening right in front of you to bring in, that new perspective.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. It's really that chance to make sure that, you've got that control over yourself
Mm.
and that you've brought your best self in. It aligns with your values and that the room around you isn't kind of leading you in down the path of something out of alignment, something that is, not
Be
what you
overwhelming,
want it to be.
right?
Yeah.
Be
Yeah.
overwhelming and things move really quickly
Yes.
and things are only gonna continue to move more quickly. So
Yeah.
it's again, it's kinda goes back to the control and how you wanna show up and leading with intention and clarity, I think is only valuable in terms of decision making and leadership as a whole.
Yeah, and it's been great to kind of get a little more color and layer around your own leadership journey and the imprint that you leave, and really get a sense of your values and your presence with your clients and your friends and your family. When you think about your leadership impact, I'm curious about who has made an impact on you.
Great question, Lori. I would say like the 2 people that come to mind, one without a doubt, Morgan Ruskin, my
Mhm.
business partner, has had, immense impact in terms of myself, my leadership, the creation of Beacon Talent. I think starting a firm together really requires deep trust, very strong alignment, and very importantly, like shared values. And Morgan is someone who leads with conviction and always brings like the highest level of integrity. And she is like one of my most trusted people in the world. And we've known and worked together for 2 decades, which is amazing. So for us, like, even though our styles are not exactly the same, our personalities are very complementary. We have a very strong synergy. We have very, similar core values and I think importantly, like there's a really mutual respect between us. So without a doubt, Morgan has been, incredibly impactful and very fortunate to obviously have her as a partner within Beacon. The other would be my dad. My dad's had like a very accomplished executive career. He invested his professional career working with 3 organizations and had a tremendous amount of success. So I grew up, like, really watching his leadership. I saw, the responsibility he carried, the decisions, he would have had to make, how he treated people around him, the sacrifices, he had to make to arrive at that level. And I think, like, his level of discipline, his level of, like, steadiness, his commitments, I think had very much impacted me, my standards, my work ethic, and truly my sense of accountability. So that I think like is very impactful in terms of how I show up from a day to day. And also like we're very fortunate he has taken on, an advisory role to Beacon Talent. So for us it's fantastic and very fortunate to have an executive provide insight when we are going through different changes, growth, challenges, just understanding, what a CEO would think, what are great questions to ask, and just like a different perspective and someone that we can trust to provide very real insights when needed.
There's something to be said about having somebody who's just like further along in their career. Obviously, it's your dad; he's much further
Yeah.
along, but having been there, done that, to learn from in a way that feels safe.
Mhm.
Like the stakes are low. He's not going to go tell your boss or your client.
Mm.
He really just wants to see you folks do your best and help you learn to get there, which I think is great.
Yeah.
It's always wonderful to have that.
Yeah, and like, as an entrepreneur and founder, we're always experiencing, and you know this now too. Every day can be different. You can things are thrown your way that are net new. And again, you want to show up in your best way to be able to navigate and solve them. And, sometimes getting that perspective from a C level in terms of are these the right things? Are we on the right track? And just kind of yep, that's great. Think about this. It's just like it's another just solid perspective for us to feel confident that we're continuing to do the right things. And again, continuing to show up at our best for our clients and our candidates.
And, even going back to Morgan, there's something to be said about somebody being like shoulder to shoulder with you,
Mhm.
that you're building something together.
Mhm.
Of course, you can build something on your own, but it's a little bit lonely. So it's wonderful that you've got this, decades long relationship that's evolved into this wonderful partnership.
Yeah, we're very lucky. I would say like partnerships can for sure be hard. We're very lucky, I think, like I shared, because of the respect and the core values that are really entrenched in the heart of our business and like our desire to always do the right thing and importantly, exceed expectations for every single person that we work alongside. So we are very lucky that we show up, the same with the same level of commitment and passion.
And so when you kind of think over the course of your career so far to date and all the wonderful things that you've accomplished, and just, the way that you've been able to succinctly say, this is what I want, this is where I think we're going, and, do it with that conviction. When you think about your leadership impact,
Mhm.
what do you hope you sort of leave behind as you continue to go through your career?
I think for me, like the impact I would want to leave would be we built something at Beacon that was really rooted in trust and integrity with like a very high standard of outcome and service and quality. I think, for me, I would say I would love our, you know, people that we work with to know, that we approach their business and career decisions with the highest amount of care and accountability. And like I said earlier, responsibility in like everything that we do. And I would say, like, if the organizations and the leaders that we do work with feel that perhaps we have helped make their organizations better or we have helped strengthen their teams, I think for me, that would feel like the most meaningful impact.
I love that. It's really true to what you've built and the values that you folks hold. And I really appreciate you spending the time with me today, and letting us see behind the curtain a little bit about yourself and your leadership style and how that's culminated in this career. For our listeners, I'm curious if they want to get a hold of you, what's the best way that they can reach out?
Thank you. Absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn. So is Beacon Talent Group. Please feel free to follow us. Please feel free to connect with me. Lori, I think you're going to showcase my email and contact information. So please feel free to reach out, as well as our website, beacontalent.ca.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. It's been a really a great time getting to know you a little bit better in this way, and look forward to seeing what you folks accomplish.
Thank you, Lori. I really appreciate the time. And it was so nice to connect with you and speak a bit more about leadership.
Thanks for listening to The Impact List. If today's conversation gave you something to think about, subscribe for more grounded, honest discussions with leaders who are figuring it out in real time. And if this episode would help someone you know, pass it along. This is your reminder to lead clearly, stay human, and focus on what actually matters.